Rena, please tell me. What will happen to me? Rena stood imposingly, not answering. Satoshi disappeared. But Rena didn't disappear. So, what will happen to me? I'd never heard such an unpleasant laugh before. It had become akin to the sound of her breathing. It was no longer a voice or expression of feeling. Don't worry. I'll save you. Rena took one step forward, still holding the axe high above her head. Now then. One step closer. Rena's face spread out to fill my vision. Speak. One step closer. Rena's nose was close enough to touch mine, and was still pushing closer. There's something you want to say, isn't there? I'll listen. I'll save you, okay? Speak, okay? Speak, okay? I slumped down, landing squarely on my butt. It wasn't for some pathetic reason. It was all I could do to get as far away from Rena. I had the gut feeling that I couldn't let her laughter end. Because when that laughter ended, I can't speak. It's like a pure tense moment I can't read. The moment I picked up on that feeling, my body moved by instinct. I sprang to my feet so fast I couldn't believe it and pushed Rena away with both hands. Rena was light as a feather. Thrown about by the unbalanced weight of the axe, she was sent backwards, as if she had been carried off by the wind. After confirming that out the corner of my eye, I dashed off at full speed. I was the perfect picture of feeling like a greased pig. Get away from Rena. Run away. Survive. I couldn't think of anything other than this. While I was running, I remembered I'd been holding onto the bat the entire time. Such a worthless weapon. I couldn't believe I'd forgotten about this weapon at such an important time. I sped even farther down the winding path. I didn't even feel myself gasping for breath or my legs getting heavy. My body understood it as well. If I didn't run away from here, I wouldn't live. I could hear the laughter of that of Rena coming from behind me. It rang through the trees and in my head, and soon chiselled away at my sanity. The grove of the trees thinned out, my field of vision suddenly expanding. Where was this? For a moment, I was bewildered by the scenery I knew, but couldn't quite remember. I quickly realised it was the damn site. The fact that I dashed madly and ended up in a place like this gave me a bad feeling, like I was following someone's scripted plot. I had a good view of my surroundings, but I didn't see a single soul here. This was a terrible spot for someone on the run, but there was no better place for an attacker. My heart was already on the verge of bursting. The muscles in my legs were screaming, but I didn't care. If I stopped here, then they might not even be able to scream for much longer. Even still, I glanced back, looking for an excuse to rest. Rena wasn't there. Instead, I saw 2 villagers walking around. I breathed a sigh of relief that it wasn't Rena, but a third party. Except the voice inside me rang the alarm once again. Villagers walking around weren't suspicious in and of themselves, but it bothered me. They were both in rough-looking clothes. Empty-handed, they definitely give the impression that they were just out for a walk. But at this time of day, 2 adults wandering around without a purpose, it was enough to raise questions. But more than anything, those eyes. They weren't chit-chatting while walking. They were both silent, heading forward, looking in my direction. Was I at the end of my rope and had finally started imagining things? I should run away. That was probably the best choice. If they weren't involved, I'd lose them easily by running. If they were part of the group after me, then they would come running after me. Either way, unless I hurried up, Rena would catch up with me. That's right, I was going to run. Deciding that, the moment I began to turn tail, both of them rushed towards me, as if they knew exactly what I was thinking. Somewhere inside me, I jumped to the conclusion that Rena was the only thing I needed to be afraid of. I made the assumption that I didn't need to fear anything else. But right now, I realised just how blatantly wrong I was. Suddenly, the story Oishi told me about the demons all leaving the village to hunt prey floated back through the back of my mind. My dyslexia is playing with me today. God. I could tell they were both coming after me without even turning around because of their friend-trick footsteps. It was frightening, being unable to shake Rena off as she slowly closed in on me. But this didn't even compare. Being pursued with such violent ferocity, this straightforward horror was unparalleled. One of the pursuers' arms grazed my shoulder. Now it wasn't just their frenzied footsteps, but also the distinct sound of their breathing that I could hear. No, I could practically feel them breathing on me. They were already right behind me. Calm down, Kiichi Maibara. Still running at full tilt, I felt the surrounding area go still. No, it felt like time itself had stopped. I turned my head back slightly in that frozen world, realizing how close my pursuers had gotten to me. I couldn't win against the legs of an adult. In less time than it would take to blink twice, when this frozen time began moving again, they'd be right on top of me. And then... Don't think about that, Kiichi. First, realize that you won't be able to shake them off like this. If the fact that you can't get away was a given, then you need to make a decision. Go with the right leg or go with the left. You just need to decide which one. Let's go with the left. The moment I decided that, the temporal singularity burst into pieces. Rights. Lefts. I swung the bat in a wide arc with my right arm, using that interior. I stopped and suddenly spun. What? The two of them were clearly startled. Momentarily losing sight of me, both of their outstretched arms, ready to grab me, instead grasped at empty space. The man on the right, I applaud him for being able to figure it out, spun around to the spot I shouldn't have been, and faced me in astonishment. But it was too late. I didn't even need to swing my bat. All I needed to do was extend my arms as I turned around. It was by no means a heavy blow, but it seemed like it had enough power behind it to knock him off his feet. But just knocking him down wasn't enough to scare him away. He got back up in no time. Both of them took a fighting stance and were ready to face me. This made me certain they weren't just two people out for a walk. They were clearly after me. It felt much easier than dealing with Rena. Just by not recognizing their faces, by not knowing them, it made things easier. I smiled wryly on the inside. What do you want with me? Next one is going to be right in your face, you bastard. It's fine if it was... It was fine if it was just a bluff. By barking out at them, I was able to fire myself up. They didn't respond. They spread out to either side of me with unbelievably calm expressions on their faces. One of them would grab onto my back, the other would hold me down. Was that their plan? Taking on both of them at once would be impossible. Hot sweat poured from every pore in my body. Then I'd just have to settle it with the first move. I'd step in and strike the first one down. Narrowing my target down to the man on the right who had already been knocked down before, I stepped in and swung with all my might. There was no way for an unarmed person to guard against it. It would cause immense damage. If they blocked it with their arm, their bone would snap like a twig. If they turned their back to it, then it was possible that the blow would travel all the way to their vital organs. It looked like he was aware of this. He pushed further down the kill zone between us and delivered a fist right into my guts. Not good. With this distance, in this position, and in this state, there was no way for me to dodge it. The world flipped upside down. I understood that I was being tossed around like a rag doll. I landed on the soft earth without a sound, feeling the grainy soil press against my face. It didn't hurt at all. But the moment I thought that, I suddenly felt pain coming from the abrasions on my skin, as well as the contents of my stomach being forced upwards, flooding my mouth with a bitter sensation. I knew very well that I didn't have the time to relish this experience. I stood up quickly as I could, but at that moment the other man was already barreling towards me. Being able to comprehend calmly that I simply couldn't dodge it made it all the more upsetting. After ploughing into my stomach full force once again, my assailant twisted around behind me, and locked his thick arm around my neck. My throat felt like it was being crushed by this immense strength. I couldn't even contemplate that I was being strangled, or that I was about to go unconscious. My vision simply darkened, and a silent whining noise began playing deep inside my mind. It took everything I had to keep myself from blacking out. While this was happening, the other man was more than likely standing in front of me. I wasn't able to open my eyes, but I could feel that he was there. There was nothing I could do now. Unable to shake this arm off me, I couldn't run. I couldn't fight back. Dire straits. I couldn't even come up the phrase that adequately described my situation. Does that make sense? Dire straits. I couldn't even come up with the phrase that adequately described my situation. Huh? Oh, he's in his house? A familiar ceiling. The smell of the bed and pillows. I knew them well. Was this my room? Normally there wouldn't be anyone in my room besides me, but their presence made me spring wide awake. When I did that, pain shot throughout my entire body. Oh. Okay. Feeling alright? I think you'd better just lie down for a bit. Why was Rena in my room? Blood began to surge through my muscles and my capillaries. But Rena's smile belonged to the Rena I knew well. I knew I shouldn't let myself feel this way, but I relaxed thinking that this version of Rena was safe. Why am I? Don't you remember? After losing consciousness, nothing at all. My body had become more lethargic than I could have ever imagined. I guess that would be the expected outcome after exerting everything I had back there. I tried to at least clear my head, but I couldn't shake the sluggish feeling out of my mind. I called the doctor. He should be here soon. I think you'd better just lie down until then. I wasn't injured seriously enough to merit calling a doctor, but knowing that someone impartial was coming was slightly reassuring. Why am I here? I'm sure I was at the dam site. That's what I want to know. What happened? When I got there, Kiichi was already passed out. That's why I'm the one that wants to know. I was attacked by two weirdos. As I talked about it, I finally remembered what happened right before I passed out. Recalling that memory and the terror that went along with it caused the fogginess around my head to clear right up. Let's forget about those two for now. I didn't expect Rena to be nursing me. I thought Rena was trying to kill me. She would have had the perfect chance while I was unconscious. Not only did she not kill me, she nursed me back to health. Amazing you could drag me all the way back here. Wasn't I heavy? Looking at Rena's delicate frame, it was hard to believe that she had not only gotten me back home, but even dragged me all the way up to the second floor. Did she have some help? Don't you remember, Kichi? Rena appeared a bit surprised, but still kept her smile. I only propped you up on my shoulder. You said you could walk on your own and that you were fine. You don't remember? I didn't remember. My memory is fuzzy after the point where I lost consciousness. What about those two? Huh? When you got there, Rena, the ones with me, or rather those two guys. There wasn't anyone. She said it bluntly. The way she stated it felt slightly unpleasant. I was just too timid at that time. I might have been able to force some answers out of Rena. But if I did that, then this kind Rena might transform back into scary Rena, who I didn't know. Fearing that, I didn't press any further. Thinking about it, it was the obvious choice. If both of those men were there, I don't think Rena would have stood a chance. I couldn't find a way to explain it unless I assumed she brought me here after those two were already gone. Rena was still smiling. Her eyes sparkled warmly. Yet, I felt like I was hallucinating when I saw something. Something akin to a shadow slowly creeping across her face. That small omen sent shivers down my spine. While Rena was still Rena, I needed to make contact. I needed to contact Oishi. Rena stopped me when I tried to get out of bed. She said it would aggravate my wounds, so I should sleep. I'd like to go to the bathroom, though. So sorry. Rena couldn't say anything else. While Rena stayed in the room, I quickly went downstairs to get the phone receiver in the living room. When I approached the front door, the doorbell rang ding-dong. Ding-dong. It must have been the doctor Rena had called. It was strange for a patient to welcome in the doctor who was making a house call, but it would be incredibly reassuring to have him here for the considerable time it would take Oishi to get here. I carelessly opened the door with that simple assumption and regretted it almost instantly. Mion? Oh, you look fine. I heard you collapsed, so I came to check up on you. She's got a gun around her shoulder. How did you know I collapsed? I heard from Rena over the phone. Do I need any reason other than that? I understood why she would call the doctor, but why Mion too? Rena was descending the stairs behind me. Rena, does Keiichi look pretty alright? Sorry, Rena, doesn't Kei-chan look pretty alright? See, she made me worried for nothing. That's true. Maybe I worried for nothing as well. They both began laughing. It appeared to be cheerful laughter, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was a darkness looming over them. Whoa, what's up with this shoe rack? How did it get like this? The shoe rack that I'd smashed to pieces had been like this since yesterday. I fell, you see. And the bat I was holding at the time I slammed into it. I fell, you see, and the bat I was holding at the time slammed into it. Does that make sense? I kind of get what you're saying. This is what happens when you swing around something you're not used to handling. I kept the fact that it was none of her business to myself. But leaving it like this will really startle your parents when they get home. I'll fix it up for you later. Now, come on, Kei-chan. The terminally ill need their rest. Oh my god. Come, come. Back in bed, back in bed. Both of them urged me up the stairs. Had no chance to call Oishi. I was pushed into my bed. As it was the first time Mion had been in my room, she began searching around it intently. She fiddled around my room and was scolded by Rena. You can imagine how it went. It was uncomfortable having my room poked around in, but the conversation was so benign that it was heartwarming. During that innocent conversation, Neon said something as though it was perfectly ordinary. Rena, did you call the manager? Yep. Right after I called Mi-chan. He said he'd be right over. Manager? The out-of-place word gave me a bad feeling. Rena called a doctor. Then called Neon. And after that she called a manager. Who was this manager? Since Rena and Mion's conversation was so peaceful, it only felt slightly odd. What are you two talking about? Who's this manager? Didn't you know, Kei-chan? We mean the manager when we say manager. Like the director of a movie. Or like a foreman of a construction site. I dug through all of my memories for a manager who might have business with me. Only one thing came to mind. What Rena just said. The construction site foreman. The very first victim of the first incident, the dismemberment at the damp construction site. The foreman. But that was strange. He was supposed to be dead. There was no way they could call him. I don't understand what you guys are talking about. What does that manager have to do with me? You said he was coming. Did you mean to my house? I asked one obvious question after another. But all the two of them did was smile coolly at each other. There was a huge difference between how the two of them appeared and how my suspicions were playing out. Slowly I felt discomfort and panic welling up inside me. I couldn't understand what Rena and Mion were talking about. Kei-chan, you've got into baseball lately, haven't you? Pretty sure the manager will be happy to hear that. So who is this manager? The manager is the manager? So who is this manager? Rena and Mion looked at each other and laughed haughtily. That disturbing crackle unpleasantly resounded around me. That laugh, long enough to be unsettling, ended abruptly. Oh yeah, we should finish up before the manager comes. You remember, don't you, Kei-chan? Her face was laughing, but Mion's eyes told a different story. Remember what? Kiichi, had he forgotten, I wonder? About the penalty. About the penalty? Did you really forget? The homework with the mochi? The homework where you were supposed to guess which one Rena made? Oh dear. This is not looking good for our boy. You forgot about the homework, didn't you? I certainly did have that homework. But I'd thrown away the rest of the mochi after I found the sewing needle. So I wasn't able to answer which one Rena made. The penalty for that. Why now? No doubt my question was written all over my face. Their answer to my question was that dry laughter. I could no longer make heads nor tails of anything. I began to think that this entire day was somehow insane, strange, incomprehensible. Being chased by Rena, attacked by strange men, the penalty Mion and Rena were talking about. What were these two laughing at? It didn't take that long for me to realise that I'd been dragged into an abnormal situation. Who were these two? Who were these people? Who were these double-gangers of Rena and Mion? Rena had gotten behind me at some point. I've realised we've not really looked at the sprites. I mean, I think we might have at one point, but it's been a while, so let's look at the updated sprites. Rena had gotten behind me at some point. Why was she pinning my arms behind my back? What are you doing? Don't move. This is your penalty. My body was already very sluggish, and Rena pinning my arms back made it harder to move. I seriously tried to struggle, but she wouldn't even budge. My panic began to well up, and I realised this was well beyond the realm of jokes and pleasantries. The freakishly monstrous strength. It would have been impossible for the Rena that I knew. Then, these thin, frail arms grasping me firmly. Whose arms were they? Kei-chan, no struggling. Club rules, there are no exceptions. You can't fight against the penalty. Mion, no, that thing that looked like Mion, spoke to me like how Mion would speak to me. But I was certain that this was not Mion. Someone who wasn't Mion, someone who's just pretending to be Mion. Need to finish this up before the manager comes. Mion fished into her pockets and pulled out something bizarre. I could tell what it was just by looking, but for such a thing to be in her pocket, my mind wouldn't accept it. What is that? It was a small syringe. It was a small, clear syringe, like what a doctor would use when you went to him when you were sick. Rena held me even tighter, and I could hear the clattering laughter that no longer sounded like laughter blaring into my ear. That eerie laughter. It wasn't something that the Rena I knew, could ever produce from her own throat. This thing that was pretending to be Rena, was that their real laugh? Unable to defend myself, the syringe Mion was holding drew closer, and that needle tip was waved in front of my face countless times. Don't worry, don't worry. It won't hurt. It won't hurt. What are you planning on doing? What kind of sick joke is this? What are you saying, Kei-chan? You know exactly what's going on, don't you? About what? I don't understand any of this at all. I know you know. No use playing the fool this late in the game. Stop talking nonsense to try and confuse me. You're going to have done to you what happened to Tomitake. What? The same as Tomitake. I didn't really understand what she meant. What did that have to do with this syringe? You're playing dumb, Kei-chan. Or Kiichi. Let's go back to the old sprites. You should have realised it by now. Rena whispered into my ear, laughing as if to admonish me. But even the way she spoke was repulsive beyond compare. Playing dumb? Me? About what? What do you mean, the same as Tomitake? Everyone thought at first that it was a hit and run, except when the officer got closer to check if he was still alive. He soon noticed it wasn't a normal situation. His throat was scratched out. From a knife or something? No. Nails. Nails? Nails as in fingernails. With those Gouged through? That's right. Tomatake had clawed out his own throat with his own nails and died. There's no way someone could die like that. So then, for that to happen, we thought drugs were to blame, but nothing of that nature was detected. That's right. The police didn't find any drugs in Tomatake's system. The police told me they didn't find any drugs in Tomatake's body. What is this? Go. The two of them laughed together with that sickening laughter. Of course they'd laugh. To assume that such a medicine didn't exist just because the police didn't know about it was completely foolish. Meaning, the drug that caused Tomatake to die in such a bizarre manner did exist. If Mion injected this into me, then that would probably be all the proof I needed. That would be basically mean I'd end up the same as Tomatake. Become hysterical, scratching out my throat in my last moments, then die. For such an outrageous drug to exist. For Mion to be holding it. And that I was about to be... and that I was about to be injected with it. At that moment, I did not feel there was any need whatsoever to question it. What kind of idiot, when he's trying to dodge a ball flying straight for his face, has time to think of a reason as to why it's flying at him? Just give up. Alright then. Mion's actions lacked any gravitas, and that made it even more terrifying. There was none of the ceremony like when someone is sentenced to death. There was no hesitation at all, as if she were brushing her teeth. Mion reached out with one hand and grabbed onto my chest. It felt like electricity had run through the back of my head, and the entire world had gone dark. Did I stand up too fast? Or did someone hit me really hard in the back of the head? Having lost my sense of balance, I was assaulted by a wave of dizziness. Jeez. I squatted down for a bit. When I came back to my senses, my entire room had changed drastically. The numbness in my head was gone, and slowly I could tell blood was flowing into my extremities again. How long had I been squatting here? How many minutes? Or has it been hours? It was almost as if the hands on the clock had stopped moving the entire time my eyes were closed. That's how little time passed. Really? The air in the room wasn't filled with that madness from before, only a dull silence. Brenna wasn't there pinning my arms, and Neon wasn't there about to inject me with a needle. No way. Could it be? All of it? Was a hallucination? There was no other presence in the room besides my own. It was the weirdest experience I'd ever had. I was certainly with Rena and Mion. I doubted my sanity for a moment, but I was also seized with some sort of comfort. I guess that terrible ordeal was a hallucination. Neither Rena nor Mion. They wouldn't ever do something so terrible. My head grew hot. I could tell my emotions were welling up. Why? That wasn't a reason to cry. Why? It was sorrow. Why was I sad? I don't understand. I don't understand. Kind to everyone, not discriminating against age or gender. Mion. That Mion was sprawled by the window in an unnatural pose. Blood stained her a deep red from her head down to her chest. The bright crimson smeared on the walls. That splatter had undoubtedly came from Mion. She always had that bright smile and was kind to me from the day I transferred. Except when she put needles in your mochi. Rena. That same Rena was slumped at my feet and was making the same pool of blood as Mion. I couldn't comprehend what had just happened. Did someone come to save me? Then they beat these two down? With this metal bat? I finally noticed the weight in my right hand. How long had it been there? It was Satoshi's metal bat. It was covered in a deep red. There was no doubt that this was the weapon used to mutilate both of them. And I was holding that weapon. I was the only person in the house. Looking at this objectively, I couldn't think of anyone other than myself who could have done it. I did this. That's right. Keiichi Maibara. Of course I did it. I told myself gently, as if coaxing myself. Hey, me. There's no reason for you to remember it, nor is there a need to regret it. Eat or be eaten. You get that, don't you? But the blood. There's so much. Neither Rena nor Mion had moved an inch. It wasn't just a split forehead and a trickle of blood, nothing that simple. The entire room was splattered with red, and that told me it didn't end with just 2 or 3 strikes. Were they dead? Both of them? The depths of my mind was calm, but on the surface I was panicking and agitated. Calm down, Keiichi Maibara. What happened to your usual calm self? Come on now. Do like you always do. Throw your head back and take a deep breath. Come on. Once. Twice. Breathe deeply. Calm down. Calm down. I chanted that over and over again in my head and relaxed. Colour came back to my vision, and smells re-infused the air. At the same time, I remembered what happened when I blacked out. Rena and Mion had attacked me. They were about to inject me with whatever caused the same symptoms of stomatake. But right before that happened, I fought back. I twisted my whole body and threw Rena as she was pinning my arms. Then I followed through with my spin and rammed my foot as hard as I could into Mion's torso. It was soft. Rena tried jumping on me, so I tackled her as hard as I could and slammed her against a wall. I didn't let that brief moment of having them off balance slip by. Satoshi's bat that was left carelessly by the side of my desk. Weep. At that moment, everything went pitch black. There was nothing recorded past this point in the videotape in my mind. No, that wasn't right. It wasn't that there was nothing recorded. It was recorded just fine. Just the other me inside myself had told me not to look and had turned off the TV. Just because the screen had gone black and I couldn't see it didn't mean that the videotape within me hadn't recorded it. The TV was just off. The video was still playing. The tape within me, creaking along, still playing. On the other end of that pitch black screen, that horrifying video was still playing on. Compared to this though, the screen right before my eyes, was still so difficult to take in. There was blood splattered everywhere on the walls, the two of them in these unnatural poses. Not a sign of movement from them. I couldn't even tell if they were breathing. No matter what the circumstances were, my friends, these girls, I had attacked them. I may have even killed them. But if I hadn't done this, I would have been the one done for. Balancing that out on an imaginary scale, it felt odd that I'd even feel bad about it. Even if it was a bit excessive, this was justifiable self-defense. The proof was all here. The two of them collapsed here in Mion's syringe. Mion's syringe filled with some unknown drug that would certainly solve the mystery surrounding the incident with Tomitaki. And from the fact that both of these two were involved, they'd be able to pick out the criminals one after the other. Still, I might be suspected for this, but that was just fine. Anyway, now this should be a police affair. This wouldn't fade into the darkness like Rena's past incidents. As long as the police were involved, that should bring this to a close. They'll probably revisit their investigation on the chain of incidents. Oishi would definitely get to the bottom of this. Meaning my wish of not wanting to die, of wanting to know the truth, that would be fulfilled in its most basic form. It was all a matter of time now. The doctor Rena called should be getting here soon. I confess everything to him. I needed to contact Oishi. No, the doctor has to be sus because there was a syringe involved, right? At that moment I remembered. Besides the doctor, a manager had been called. It was easy to imagine that they were someone deeply involved with the incidents, judging from Rena and Mion's conversation. The ache in my chest, caused by the gruesome deed I'd done, dissipated rapidly. It was not over yet. This place was no longer safe. Stay calm, Keiichi Maibara. It's not over yet. I needed to live long enough to tell the police of this incident. At that moment, I felt like I heard someone's voice from outside. Since people were speaking, it must mean there was more than one person. I moved the curtain ever so slightly and peered outside. It was a bizarre sight. About 4 or 5 grown men was all gathered at the gate. They very much resembled the 2 men who'd assaulted me at the dam site today. Those 2 might be among them. There was one person there wearing a white coat, but he didn't look like a doctor at all. My gut told me he was in disguise, only posing as a doctor. That guy would probably ring the bell and get me to open the front door. Pretend to be a doctor to get me to open the door, and the rest of them would all rush in at once. At that moment I saw the car parked behind me. My heart nearly skipped a beat. The white van. No mistaking it. That van. The one that tried to run me down. The man in the white coat entered the gate and headed towards the front door. The rest of the men hid in the bushes and watched him. I probably couldn't pretend that I wasn't home. Undoubtedly they'd just break the window and enter. I needed to get out of here somehow. Then use a public phone to contact Oishi. Then meet up somewhere. First of all, I needed a weapon. Then shoes. But before all of that, there was one thing that I had to do. I had no intention of dying. I'd live and reveal the truth about this nonsensical curse of Oyashiro-sama. But what would happen from here on, regardless of how determined I was, may bring about my demise. And that was why there was one thing more important than getting out of here right now. I need to get that clock out quickly and take down the note behind it. Damn it. The tape was sticking to it fast. It would be fine if it was torn a little. I opened the slightly torn note and began writing another passage with ballpoint pen. If I wasn't able to inform Oishi, then the only thing I could rely on was this note. I'd never thought a piece of torn college-ruled notebook paper could be this reliable before. I had no time. I'd only write what I knew right now. I needed to leave some sort of information that would lead them to uncover the truth. Rena and Mion are conspirators of the perpetrators. This was an undeniable fact. I still didn't want to believe it, but it was a fact. Anyway, I'd leave all the information that would help lead them to finding the perpetrators. There are 4 or 5 adults, maybe more. They have a white van. This was everything I was able to see from the window. There may be more. Also, there was that unidentified person known as the manager. To begin with, the term manager didn't even mesh with Hinamizawa at all. If they were going to include the managers from the past incidents, then the only one is the construction foreman, the victim from the first murder. The very first victim in the chain of incidents. Killed in lynching, his body divided into 6 pieces. His right arm was never discovered. The police should have confirmed that death. But Rena and Mion did both call him manager. They said manager. They wouldn't use that term to refer to someone who was dead. The police would never even conceive that someone who was deceased could be involved. Could that be some sort of oversight? I didn't know. But even if I didn't know, it could be a big hint for Oishi-san. That's right. They needed to start fresh on the first incident. It wasn't just a simple dismemberment, but the start of a string of mysterious deaths that would follow. So then, there must be something hidden there. Please reinvestigate the victim from the dismemberment incident. He's alive. His death should have been established after an autopsy. Logically, you would think that as much. Logically, you'd think as much. But was that really the case? Could it have been some sort of ploy that they were able to deceive the police with? I shouldn't jump to conclusions, but he may still be alive. I have no time to ponder that right now. Oh yeah, there's something even more important I needed to write. Tomataki's death was from an unknown drug. That's right. That drug, it was an irreplaceable piece of evidence. No doubt, just by having this, everything would be uncovered. I couldn't just leave that vital clue laying on the floor. The syringe is proof. Writing that down, I stuck the syringe onto the back of the clock with plenty of tape, so it absolutely would not slip out and fall onto the floor firmly. The bell rang. They were here. I couldn't write any more. But even still, there was one last thing that I had to write. I have no idea why it has become like this. This may be the closest thing to the truth out of everything I wrote on this note. If you are reading this, then I am probably already dead, though you may or may not find my body. If I was going to write out everything that could happen, probably need to go soon. If you're reading this, then I am probably already dead, though you may or may not find my body. If I was going to write out everything that could happen, either dying from the curse or being demoned away, you who are reading this, please uncover the truth. That is my only desire. With this, my last will and testament was complete. It wasn't certain that I was going to die, but it was my final plea, just in case. I folded the note, stuck it onto the back of the clock, and returned the clock back to its usual spot. I couldn't help but pray. Oishi, if something happens to me, I'll leave the rest to you. After that, I gazed down silently at Rena and Mion. This was probably the last time we'd ever see each other. Rena, Mion, I really had thought all of us were friends. But why did it end up like this? I never had any fun in my previous school. I only worried about standardised test scores, about if the school I hoped to get into was where I really wanted to go, or a safety net. That was all I talked about. It was a dull life. The people I called friends were also my rivals in studying, in competitions, in personal records, and standardised test scores. Everyone here taught me how unhealthy that lifestyle was. This month was really fun. Making a fuss over lunch, making a fuss over the club, making a fuss over the festival. Something hot began dripping from my face. Uncontrollable tears. I should have had no obligation to shed tears for them. But they wouldn't stop. Even if they were after my life. Even if they were trying to kill me. Everything that happened this month, I wouldn't forget it. Or could it be those happy days were all a facade? Why is it not a sound right? I don't know. As well. Was it all a trap, meticulously orchestrated up until today to ensnare me? Could it have been that I just arbitrarily assumed that they were my friends? That couldn't have been the case. Both Rena and Mion, they really were my friends. Those happy days, there was nothing fake or unclear about them. Someone probably forced them to try to kill me, or their minds were taken over, possessed by the supernatural entity known as Oyashiro-sama. Regardless, both Rena and Mion, they were the best friends ever. And when they were coming after me, it wasn't of their own volition. Wait, they weren't the kind of people to sell off their friends, regardless of whether or not they were forced. There's no way such a thing like being possessed by Oyashiro could happen in reality. Then, did the real Rena and Mion come after me? What was I thinking? What a silly, dumb idea. Having beaten down both Rena and Mion, I was still debating if they were the real ones or the fakes. There was no real or fake, only the reality that was before me. Rena and Mion was sprawled out at my feet. That was the only truth. I was only trying to twist the facts to my benefit, that I'd beaten my friends to death. No matter how I spun it, it wouldn't change reality. Rena and Mion were both dead. It felt like there was a crack in the dam of the syringe. What? It felt like there was a crack in the dam of strange emotions I was holding back. It felt like my calm state, which was nothing more than a bluff, had receded, and in that opening, insanity was leaking out. I killed them. I killed them. Rena and Mion. I killed them. The doorbell rang again. He needs to get out of there. The unrelenting echo pulled me back into a state of composure once again. I didn't have a moment to spare. Quickly, I needed to get away. I didn't want to die. I would uncover everything after that. The identity of whoever or whatever had pushed me this far. Even if I had to drink mud and eat grass, I would survive. I would survive. I would definitely survive. I killed Rena for that very reason. I also killed Mion. I went that far just to keep living. So I can't die. For my sake and for the sake of the late Rena and Mion, I have to survive. I ran towards the door and grabbed my shoes. The doorbell rang again as if to urge me on. Behind this single, solitary door, they were there. Keeping quiet, I headed down towards the kitchen. Headed towards the back door. Before opening the back door, I put my ear to it and checked for people outside. No one? After I put on my shoes, I opened the door slowly, so as not to make a sound. There he is, the back door. A piercing voice echoed out. That voice stabbed through me, setting my hair on end. I had to run. Get out of here, Keiichi. One after the other, I felt stuff like rationale and intelligence, those things you use when you have time to spare, spill out of me. I didn't feel any pain from the branches scratching my arms and forehead. My automosly? pulsing heart also felt neither fatigue nor pain. My entire being just wished to live. There was nothing else it desired. It probably had no complaints whatsoever, so of course I wouldn't feel fatigue. I just ran, just recklessly rushing in the direction I was already heading. Even if nobody was chasing after me, I'd still be running like this. There wasn't a thought in my mind about where I was headed. Turning around, I felt a presence right next to me. That presence was, without a doubt, chasing me like my shadow. If I even took one misstep, I would be devoured. That's what I thought. So I didn't turn around. I didn't stop. I ran. At full speed. That was the chirping of the Higurashi telling me it was evening, trying to tell me something, and then I finally heard it. The wailing cry of the victims who didn't make it. Would I be joining them? Only the Higurashi knew. They knew everything. They definitely knew. So I ran towards where I could hear more of the Higurashi's chirps. But the further I ran, the further away their chirping became. I couldn't get near them. Why are you all running away? Was it my fault? Was I the one to blame? Then I'll apologize. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, I skipped a sentence there because I was like, that's enough. I felt that only the Higurashi knew. Run from the truth of your crimes. Okay, I'm going to save it there. I'll continue this later though. Because I think we're close to the end, so I feel like I should just keep going.